Now, couldn't find a better fit for them, along with my crown. And since the baton was passed, I've been down. Cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
Welcome to another episode of Dad is Not a Noun. My name is Ishmael, changing the narrative for men of color fatherhood, as well as changing the narrative on the things I care about. And today, I have a very special guest with me on today's episode. Uh, he's first a father, devoted husband, as well as an author and an amazing chef. He has a new book. He has his first ever book. I wouldn't say it's a new book, but this is his first ever book into the world, and I'm truly honored to have him on. The name of the book is called "Turning Pages of My Life," and the beautiful thing about this book, and I can't wait to read it, is that you're never too you're never too old to change your life and evolve and become the greater person you are. I'm truly honored to have my special guest with me, Chef Samuel Nisbett. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a
No,
blessing just being here.
no, I appreciate you come on the show. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up, because it's now available on you on Amazon, the Kindle. So I'm gonna bring it up right now. But the first question I ask all my guests, because I'm a strong believer of mental health. How's your heart?
Beautiful, beautiful. My heart is strong. It's in a positive mode. It's, it's really good, really good.
And that's good. And now I have an image of the book. I have the cover of the page of the book. Like, talk to me about what made you get the itch of writing a book.
A young lady on my job, she writes poetry, and I always wanted to write a book, and I was asking her questions about it, and I always have a story to tell of where I came from. I lived a full life, and there's a lot of times where I want to tell people, positive things. I try to motivate people. I'm like a motivator, trying to motivate people through life. So I just decided to put it in a book uh, to motivate people and let people know that there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
And I think that's important too. And what I started with was the importance of you're never too old to change and evolve as a person. And that's the beauty of being a human being. It's the constant change, and trying to find your way in the world. Um, so my next question, let's dive into the book. Like, talk about your early days growing up.
Well, I did chapters, the different chapters in the book. The first chapter is called "In the Beginning," and that was like the ages from 1 to 12. Uh, I know a lot of people say, "Well, what can you have done between the age of 1 to 12?" Coming up in the Bronx, um, I wanted to be a street kid, but my parents they wanted me to be a religious kid. I was the youngest of four, and I wanted to be who I wanted to be. I just wanted to be of the world. My mother wanted me to be religion. She wanted me to be with the church, and I didn't see it that way. So the more she tried to make me um, live this one life, the more I rebelled. Um, I I gained vices at the age of between birth and 12. I shot my first gun at the age of 12 years old. I I did a lot of vices, and here it is. My parents used to beat me, and when they used to beat me, my mother used to. I never forget. She used to say, "I'm beating you because I love you," and it was confusing to me because I was like, "Here you are hurting me." I just, I was like, I never want to be in love, because you beat me because you love me. It was kind of confusing, but she meant well. I always tell people when you buy a VCR or you buy a mechanical thing, even a car, they give you a set of rules how to run this thing. When you have children, they don't give you a set of rules. So in it all, my mother and my father and my sister and my two brothers. I ended up having three fathers and two mothers, but they all loved me in the end. But sometimes, I didn't know how to take in that love. I thought it was more punishment. You beat me because you love me. Like I got to get out of here. So I ran to the streets, and the streets, introduced me to different vices to kill the pain. So that was basically chapter one. Me learning how to run to the streets and not listening to what my family was telling me. And I decided to listen what the street told me at a very young age.
Right, because I think that's important too, for the listeners to listen is that as a child, when when your parents beat you, when whip you, they don't explain it. They just tell you they love you. As a child, you don't know, and so you want an explanation. And I think that's the one thing too is that, um, you know, having parents that grew up in that mindset, you know, and not to explain, it's got to be hard because that's what they saw growing up too, and they thought that was fine too, um, and not to say their parenting was wrong. It was just a way of bringing up because that's what they saw when they were kids, and you're at and then getting raised. You're trying to figure out like why are they whooping me? Like, they didn't explain it to me. It's just because I love you. It's like uh, you know I thought love wasn't supposed to hurt. Like, you know, you're trying to understand it, and it's hard to comprehend. It's like, what did I do wrong? You know, because again, you know, if it's not explained in a certain way where you're understanding, then you're like, okay, I guess they don't love me. So let me see if I can find love in a different way, in a different way. And then this is your way to rebel, because I know that's one of the chapters in the book is called, you're rebelling, and this is your form of rebelling because now you're going to the streets because you're looking for that sort of kind of love that you weren't getting at home because you didn't understand, and you're going to the streets for it. So just talk about those times where you thought that this was love through the streets.
Well, that brings us to the next chapter. Um, the next chapter of my book is let me see, I think it's Teenage Rebel. Yeah,
Hmm.
Teen Rebel. And in Teen Rebel, what it was is at that point in my life, my parents decided, and when I think back, it was such a blessing, but yet I didn't even take it in. They decided they didn't want me to go to junior high school in the Bronx. That's a part of New York. Um, for those that don't know, that's a part of New York. So they decided to move from the Bronx to Westchester County, uh, predominantly. Uh, very nice neighborhood. It's a lot in the book where it tells how I moved from the Bronx to Westchester County trying to save me. And I didn't like it because it was predominantly white. And me being an African American young lad coming from the Bronx, I didn't feel I fit in. So it shows in the book how I found a way to fit in. Um, some of my best friends became, I learned how to adapt to that world. Um, and I was able to make it through that. It was rough, but I got heavily more into drugs. Um, I got into the rock and roll world. So it's a lot of time. My wife will be in the supermarket and she sees me singing one of the songs in the supermarket, and she goes, "You know the words too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I grew up with the rock and roll." Like there's a lot of groups my wife doesn't know. And I grew up with rock and roll. My neighborhood is predominantly white, and I grew up that way. And it's a lot of stories in the book that tells about different experiences I had growing up, an African American young man in a predominantly white area. Um, the schools I went to, um, and I felt that I didn't have to go to school. I found a way how to make money off of my lifestyle. So I decided, to get into different vices that I thought was a lifelong thing. But grow come see, my mom used to say, and I grew and I came and I seen. So
True
yeah,
that.
so teenage rebel is kind of, and it's like a thing that I always try to remind, dads, moms, kids are human. Um, they have feelings. Sometimes, I seen somebody the other day in the store, and a little boy was asking his mother, she was buying a little container of cereal,
Hmm.
and she was like, "Well, mommy, where are we gonna get the milk for it?" And the mother kept saying, "Shh, be quiet, be quiet." And then the lady goes up to the counter and she orders a coffee and she asks the man if he could put milk in the cereal. And I was like, you could have just told that young little kid, he was like about 5, 6 years old. You could have tell him, I'm gonna buy it from the man. It's like, really? You told the kid to shut up and he's acting up. My wife was like, well, maybe he's a nagging kid. Yeah, kids are nagging, but you know what? That was a legit question. Um, where are you going to get the milk from? So sometimes it was like a lot of times I didn't know where to go with questions. And there I was a teenager running to the streets. And one thing, I had a young lady read my book, and she was saying, I like the feedback I'm getting. And she said, boy, your mother sure did try hard with you. And that's one thing I gotta say. She tried hard. You'll see in the book how she tried, I ran the other way. She tried, I ran the other way. But it wasn't like she wasn't trying, and it wasn't like I wasn't running the other way. It was, but
Right.
as you read the book and as the chapters go on, that effect of going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, you see how it evolved and how I'll give you a little of the end of the book that the first two chapters I'm that caterpillar, but as you get to the end, I turn out to be that butterfly.
Right.
So
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And that's the one thing too. It's like um, we're constantly changing. We're always evolving as human beings. If you're not changing over time, then there's something wrong. So I think that's the most
yes,
important thing. And you growing up, you were just trying to find out where do I belong in this place. Um, And as a child, like you said, you're not nagging. You're curious. You want answers. It's not being nagging. You just want answers. And being a child, simplicity, is the name of the game. Is that you want things um, explained as simple as possible so you understand because it makes sense. And and I think like you're growing up, your parents and you were on a different wavelength. It's like you want to understand like why like you were saying like you were in a grocery store and the kid like asking like where are we gonna get milk, and the parents like shut up. It's like that's not a legitimate answer. The kid just want a answer of like why can you just answer
Right,
that question?
right.
It's not that case, not that case. But just talk about you know going to the wrong crowd because again, like growing up, we want to belong to something. You know, we want to be a part of something. So just talk about those days of being with the wrong crowd.
That brings you to the next chapter. The next chapter is called chaos, and I think that says it all in one word. My life was chaos. It was chaotic. It was, and it's crazy because my mother brought me up to Hartsdale, which is a very nice neighborhood, and it was like I don't know how I did it, but I found like the craziest kids. Like I don't know. I did find one good good friend of mine. She was my next door neighbor, and we used to build tree houses. We had a very good relationship. But then, other than him, it was like I found some crazy friends, um, and we just got involved in the craziest stuff, uh, making money and just doing what we do. And I just I had a love for drugs. Um, I didn't meet my niece till she was in her 20s, and I remember telling her when I met her, I said, I thank God for drugs. And she looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what do you mean you thank God for drugs? Back then, I was in so much pain, I didn't even know that I was in pain because I was camouflaging it with the drugs. I didn't know there was a dad's back then. I didn't have a dad's club, which told me, yo, bro, you could go to therapy, man. You could go to therapy and talk to somebody. Um, I didn't have people like different drug programs that I ended up going into that said, um, I remember when I came out of, I was incarcerated for a week or so, and I had to go to this drug program. And when I came out, my girlfriend at the time was still using, and they said, "Listen, run, Forrest, run, Forrest, run." They were telling me like, "You can't go back to that same woman and think it's gonna work." I didn't listen. I went right back to her. So I didn't have all these good programs that are out here. Um, all I had was that little bag that somebody in the street gave me, and I was like, "Okay, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. I was just suppressing it and hiding it. Even up to today, I walk around with my guards up. My wife is sometimes like, "Gosh, you're like, everything's okay," and and I believe everything is okay. Sometimes I'm driving down the streets, I see the police around, uh, siren, and I'm looking around like I'm nervous, but I'm legal. I'm driving a car, I'm legal. I got papers on the car, but it's still in me, from when I was younger, from all the stuff I did. Um, and it follows you, but that chaos really, um, it was real. It was real. My life was really chaotic. I don't blame. I used to blame myself. Um, until I met a therapist, and she told me to write about my life. And I wrote all the chaotic stuff I did, and all the bad things I did, and I did this, I did this, I did this. And she read it, and she goes, "Wait, I want you to go home and write this whole thing over, but don't blame yourself for anything." And I was like, "Huh?" And I went home and I wrote it over, and it brought out a lot of light. I
Mm.
didn't blame myself. I found out that it was reasons. She said you didn't wake up wanting to get high, like one day to say, "Oh, I'm gonna get high," or "I'm gonna do this," or "I'm gonna, do these different vices." You didn't wake up that way. It was something that drove you to it. And when I wrote it down, I was like, "Wow." I said, "This is interesting because really it is me, but it isn't me." I was talking to a young man just 2 days ago about my book, and I told him that I always wanted to be, like, you could always do whatever you want to be in life if you really press. And he goes, "Yeah, I wanted to be a fireman and a baseball player and a few other things." I said, "So why didn't you do it?" He goes, and he works at my job, and he goes, "Oh, my parents didn't push me enough." I was
Mm.
like, "Wow." I said, how you gonna blame it on your parents? You didn't push yourself enough." He
Yep.
was like, "Yeah, but and I'm like, it was the opposite with me. My
Right.
parents pushed me too much. So sometimes you could push somebody too much, or
Right.
sometimes the kid think you ain't pushing them enough because they feel you should push them. But it's like it got to be a medium thing. Because I'm like looking at him, and then after we had this talk, he was like, "Yo, OG, I love when I talk to you. You always drop wisdom on me." Because I was like, "Yo, you got some of the blame on this too. You can't blame your parents because they didn't push you enough." And I was like, I blame my parents because they pushed me too much. So now this is the first time I ever heard somebody say my parents didn't push me enough. And I'm like, wow, like I never heard nobody say that. Usually the parents push too much. But I guess in this world, because he's a younger man, I guess some of these kids feel they're entitled and they should be pushed. And if they're not pushed, they're going to be lazy.
Right.
But in the long run, they're going to pay. They're going to pay. So,
No, I definitely can see that, but I also do believe it's just how you are explaining it to your kids. Because the one thing too is that the way you explain to your kids, because again, depending on how many kids you have, some kids may take it differently or may understand
right.
it differently. You can't just apply the same thing to every kid. Kids learn differently,
You are,
and
you
you
are,
got to have that patience with them too. And with your story, going back to your story, it's just your love languages are different. You want an explanation, and to what I'm getting from the conversation is that it's my way, not trying to explain like why, because you
right.
wanted to make sense of the situation. And so if
Yes.
you constantly hear that it's my way, well, it doesn't make sense to me, then I'm gonna rebel and I'm gonna create chaos because it doesn't make sense to me. You know, you know, you know, you're taught to respect your family, respect your parents, your mom, your dad. You're supposed to. But again, if they're constantly telling you it's my way or the highway, then it's like I'm gonna take the highway because right now you're not making any sense. It's like you're not explaining to me why. It's like a child touching the stove, a hot stove. If you don't explain to a child that hey, if you touch that stove, you're gonna burn your hand. If you tell
Right.
a kid
Right.
that hey, if you touch if you don't explain it, say if you need to just listen to me and don't explain it, they're gonna keep on touching it.
Right.
And I think that's the one thing that's important about your story. It's just, your parents are not at fault, but it's just the explanation of why. why you shouldn't
Right.
do this, why you should do this. And again, it's having that comfortable conversation because I know like later in your life, like the stuff you did, you didn't want to confide to your parents. You know what I mean?
Right.
You didn't want to have that conversation because that trust was gone at an early age because you kept on hearing, you know, just listen to me instead of explaining why. And that kind of
Right.
distance yourself from your parents. And that's the reality. And that's the one thing is that kids are going to rebel regardless, whether they're in a good home or a bad home. Kids are going to rebel because they get influenced by their surroundings, whether it's from high
Yes.
school, middle school, and that happens. But the most important thing, the kids want to feel safe. And I think that's the one thing on your story is that, you didn't feel you probably could tell me if I'm wrong or not, but you didn't feel a level of safe or trust at home because of things that you grew up to, even though your mom tried to do the best she can. Um, but it was just that level of you didn't trust because again, you're going back to like you were saying earlier. Um, but just talk about, you know, over time, finally becoming his dad and how some of the stuff that you learned as a child played a role in you being a dad.
Okay. One of the things that you touched on that I really want to talk about too is as I was talking to the young man, I told him, I said, listen, the way our parents did it, like my mother was, hard on me and all this, but being out of four, my siblings turned out all right. So they were doing something right. And I
Right.
told the young man, I said, I bet some of your siblings turned out really good. He goes, yeah, you got a point there, bro. So it's like you said, it's like, they can be given the same teaching, but everybody's different and everybody takes it in a different way. So you might have a son that, might not go to college, but he might go to trade school. He might not be cut out for college. He might be cut out for trade school. He might be the best plumber in the world. Um, or your son might become the best professor in the world. So like each kid have their own path, so sometimes you got to really figure out where they're at and which way to come. Because my parents, they did they research, I guess, and figured out, put me in trade schools and stuff like that, and really try to help me. um yeah. What was the question that you were
Oh,
saying?
no problem. But how's your relationship with your parents? Because that's the thing is that
Okay.
we learn habits from our parents and we apply it to our own kids. So just talk about
Right.
like the stuff that you learn from your parents, um, apply it to you as a parent yourself in those early times.
I it was interesting. My daughter was talking to me one day, and she said, "You know what? In the morning when I'm getting ready for school, I listen to a little gospel." I'm like, "Huh?" They watch me. A lot of times you don't know that your children are watching you. That's what I do every morning. I listen to a little gospel just to get like that USA, like get ready for the world. I put on a little gospel music. And little things like that. You know, I feel like help my children. And I remember one time I took my son to the gym, and we're in Mount Vernon, and a good friend of mine came up to my son. He goes, "Hey, listen, your pops ain't no joke. He been doing this working out for a long time." And he started telling my son about some scripture, and my son goes, "Oh, I was just reading that scripture." And he had it on his phone. I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't even know you read the Bible. It was like because I don't force it on them, but I use it, I live it, um, and I feel that they watch me. I'm very. We don't argue in front of the children. Um, I, you know, I treat my wife with all respect in front of the children and not in front of the children. So, it's like later on they can't say, "Yeah, my friend seen you in the store," slapping mommy up. No. When I'm around them, when I'm not around them, I always give her respect. I, I want my kids to realize that, and I have fun with them. Um, Yesterday, my daughter put her phone down, and she goes to school in the Bronx, and I slid some money in her cover of the phone, and I was gonna call her up later on and say, "Yo, you need money?" And then I was gonna say, "It's some in your phone." But I put too many singles in it, and it bulges out. And she was like, "Wait, did you put this in here?" And I was like, "Oh, you caught me." But I have fun with them. Give her a little extra money so she ain't in the street. I take her to my jazz club when she was younger. We used to do date night. I'd buy her some French fries. She'll fall asleep, but I would pull out the chair for her. Um, I would treat her like a queen. I remember I brought her to Victoria's Secret. I brought her little sprays. I would buy her little training bras. Now she's a teenager, but I don't want no little boy have to tell her, "Listen, if you give me some, I'll take you to Victoria's Secret." No, no, no. My dad did it already. I've done that. I've been here. I did this. I don't have to do nothing that I don't want to prove that I love you. If I love you, I love you. Because I was a boy at one time, a little boy, and I know what little boys do. So,
Yep.
it's a lot of times that the way and another thing with my children that I didn't get, I'm honest with my children.
Mm.
Um, I let them know, yeah, I did drugs. Yeah, I did this, I did that. Yeah, I did it. When I was coming up, my dad, awesome. Well, I had an awesome dad.
Right.
Um, but if I didn't know better, I thought he came out his mother with a Bible in his hand.
Right.
Um, and that wasn't the case. He used to drink. I heard stories later on about his life, and I'm like,
Mm.
wow, like you never told me this part, like what happened? You never told me this part. I try to keep it real with my children. Yeah, I did this, I did that. Um, but you know what? I still made it through.
Yeah.
Um, no matter what, you can still make it through. Um, and like my daughter plays basketball. I always go to her games. I support her. Anything that she's doing in life that is positive, um, I'm running behind them. You know?
And I think that's amazing because again, that goes back to our early conversation is that explanation of why, you know,
Right.
and again, not throwing shades on your parents because they did the best they could with the tools they have. Because again, you don't have a pamphlet of how to be a great parent. You
Right.
learn by trial and error, and so I think that's very important to understand that all parenting is not the same. They're all different, you know. Um, but just talk about, you're an amazing chef. Um, Talk about your love. Where did that love for cooking? Because again, for the past couple of years, you were the main chef at the Real Dad's picnic events. Making amazing food and doing what you do. But just talk about that passion for cooking? Where did that come about?
Um, Actually, in the back of the book, I have a link onto YouTube that tells, I got interviewed about chefing. But one of the things that a good friend of mine's, my friend Mark Vazquez, he was working in a restaurant and I needed a job. And he went to the chef. He goes, listen, I got somebody that's on time, good worker, but he needs a job. So the chef was like, well, what's the problem? He goes, he don't know how to cook. So the chef said, bring him in. And I was very young at the time, and the chef just took me under his wings. And he started teaching me, and I started learning, and I got better and better, and I found a love for it. And then later on down the line, I started working for White Plains Medical Center,
Mhm.
and it was a chef there that, I guess I didn't know that he had love for me, but he used to ride me like really, really hard. I mean, like, yo, you didn't put dates on this. You didn't do this. And I was back then, I was like really, hot headed. I said, yo, we could take this outside,
Right.
because this ain't no sense, and I was ready to fight with the guy. And I'll never forget, I went to church one Friday night, and an evangelist, Mother Sharp, was preaching. And it seemed like she was like at my job. She goes, some people at their jobs, they have problems, but if they change their attitude, the whole situation would change.
Mhm.
Sometimes we got to change our attitudes. I'm like, listening to her, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to work and I'm going to try this. And I went to work the next day, and my chef, Michael Lincoln, he goes, yeah, you didn't do no dates on that. And I go, oh, I'm sorry. Let me get that. And he looks at me like, huh? And then he yells at me at another time, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna get it, and I'll make sure I don't do that again." And I
Right.
changed my whole attitude. We became best friends.
Wow.
And another guy, I got hired like maybe a couple months later, and he called me in the office. He goes, "Sam, am I riding him too hard?" I said, "Nah, he'll learn." But the point I'm getting at is like I had people that really loved me, and I didn't know that they had that love for me, and they taught me. And I used to have this one guy at White Plains Medical Center. I used to make a recipe, and I used to leave like maybe the black pepper out on purpose, and I would make it, and he would. I said, "Rock, taste this," and he tastes it, and he goes, "It's good, but you need a little black pepper." And I'm like, yo, this guy, he's amazing.
Right.
I said, I want to be like this. And then I had one more owner of a restaurant when the Galleria first was built. I used to run the food place down there, and it was the owner was named Maddie. He used to come through, and sometime I was busy, and he used to say, "Come on, Sam, I got it." He'll take his tie and tuck it in and start cooking with me. And one day, the two people up front didn't show up, and it was only him and I. He was taking orders, I was cooking, I was serving the people, and like we made it till the afternoon when the rest of the people came. And he called me to his office. I'm like, oh boy, what did I do now? He calls me to the office, and back then, $20 was $20. He goes, here, Sam, here's a little $20. Take your girl out for some ice cream.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, when I become a boss, I want to do something like that. I want to be like that, like just appreciate the help. But, I had a journey, and, great performance. I worked for them, and I've been with them for 14 years. When they checked my criminal background, I gave them a paper that had my mugshot, my fingerprints on it, and the lady turned red as an apple. And
Wow.
she got scared. I don't blame her. And she went in the back, and one of the chefs came out. He goes, "Listen, Samuel, you got the job, but it's going to take a minute." And they came out and they gave me a chance. And ever since they gave me that chance, I've been rocking with them for 14 years now.
And that's amazing. And that's amazing. And that's the beauty about the title of the book is, taking turning the pages of your life. You're not your past. You know,
Right.
the beauty of life is that when you wake up, you live in the present. You know, you live
Yeah.
in the moment, and everything you do today, and then when you wake up the next day, you're a different person. Um, just talk about you personally, where you're at with your life right now, from all the obstacles you dealt with as a young man, dealing with drugs, trying to find your way. Where are you at right now with your life?
I'm at a very good place at my life, and it's like it's getting better every day. Um, there's a chapter in there called navigation. I had to navigate through life. There's a chapter in there called deleted. I had to let go of a lot of vices and I lost a lot of friends. That's in that chapter deleted. I lost so many friends due to drugs and ODing and AIDS and stuff like that. And I'm like, I was left here for a reason. Let me tell somebody about this so we could stop losing young women and young men off of drugs, um, off of depression. I was depressed and I ran to what I could run to. My main goal for having this book is so somebody could read it and say, listen, I don't need that drug anymore. I could do like Sam and put it down, get my life together, and it's so much sweeter. A man in the program told me, listen, you walk 20 miles into the woods, it takes 20 miles to walk out. Um, I walked 20 miles into drugs and it takes 20 years to come out. And I'm not all the way out, but trust me, I'm about 17 years out. And it's getting sweeter and sweeter. I remember going to my first drug program. They said, put your seatbelt, fasten your seatbelt because you're in for a ride of your life. And I've been for a ride. It's I got a chapter in here called searching. Um, I was searching for the right things. I was navigating. I was trying to get through. And then there was one of my chapters called "I'm Not Tired Yet." I just didn't get tired. I didn't give up. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And my last title in the book is called "Thank You," because through it all, after all I've been through, I got so many people to thank. So many programs to thank, so many people that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I'm grateful to them because, um, I just went to a funeral. There was a young man, 36 years old. Um, they die young. Even the older ones die, but when you see young people dying, I had best friends that died, and most of them because of drugs. Um, in the book, I have a memory section of young people that my best friends that passed away. Um, and this book is dedicated to some of them in memory of them. I can't bring them back, but you know what? I pray that this book helps somebody. Don't leave the earth before their time.
Definitely, definitely. And I thank you for being vulnerable. And I thank you for writing this book because I think this is something that people need to read because, again, we need men of color to share their stories. Because I know that's the one thing is, being from where you're from is hard to be vulnerable because you never seen that growing up as a kid. You never seen like a man share and be transparent of like the demons that they deal with, and for you to put it in a book and share it and be on here to share your story. that takes strength. Uh, so my last question for you is, what would you tell your younger self now, out of all the stuff you learned as this wise OG?
What would I tell myself?
Yeah,
A
tell your
lot of
young.
times I would say, don't take your time in life. Um, that fast life, you leave fast. Um, fast life isn't it. Jail is full of people trying to make that fast money. Sometimes we got to be a snail, go slow, but we last longer. Um, there's a lot of times where it's in the book. A lot of times I wanted to become a millionaire. Um, but, I had a guardian angel that looked over me because I had a praying mother. I thought I was being slick. I thought I was being, this, that. Um, but through it all, I made it. And I would say just take it slow. And I would tell parents, you might be going through things with your children, drug wise. The power of prayer is really powerful because I didn't know it, but my mother was praying for me every day. Um, there's stuff in the book where you'll be like, wow, how did you do that? Or how did you do that? I had somebody um, sitting up in the Bronx praying for me. And it wasn't no goodness of my own, but it was basically the power of prayer. Um, and that loving mother that used to beat me and say, I'm beating you because I love you. But, so it was after a while she couldn't beat me no more because I was in the streets, but she sure could have used the power of prayer and pray for me because she loved me. So it's like even if you have a son, a daughter, a cousin, sometimes you might not think you need this book, but you know what? Maybe you could treat somebody to it. Um, you could buy the book. Somebody going through something, give them the book. Let them read it. Um, they might not even have enough to get it, but invest instead of giving them $10 for a bag of dope. Buy a book for them. And my prayer is that we don't have so many young funerals no more. We're still gonna have them, but if we could cut it down one or two, that would be great. It was worth me writing the book. You know,
Definitely, definitely, and I definitely agree with that. Um, again, this has been an amazing conversation. Please go get the book, Turning the Pages of My Life by Sam L. Nesbitt. Is available on Amazon. Uh, if you got a Kindle, you can get it through Kindle. The links will be below in the description. Again, Sam, I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for jumping on and sharing your story because I think as men, it's hard for us to share and for you to come on, share your story, but most importantly, put it in a book, like and letting people know all your highs and lows is truly a heroic task that you accomplished. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Again, this has been another amazing conversation on the podcast. You can like, subscribe. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Type in "Dad is not a noun" and you'll see me. And then you'll also see Sam's book, Turning Pages of My Life. And I'm gonna get the book because I love to read, and so this is going to be another book, a part of my collection. Again, Sam, thank you, Chef Sam, thank you again, and we're out.
thank
Peace.
you. All right.